Picture this. You're at a barbecue. Someone mentions they just bought a place. Everyone nods, congratulates them, asks about the suburb, and somewhere in the back of your mind, a quiet question surfaces that you'd never actually say out loud. Can people on my salary even do that anymore? You don't ask it, nobody asks it, but almost everyone at that barbecue is thinking it. Here's the thing. That question deserves an actual answer, not a vague "it depends" from a financial advisor, not a highlight reel from someone who bought in 2015 and acts like it was easy. A real, honest look at what property actually looks like at every income level in Australia right now. That's exactly what this video is. Before we can talk about property, we need to talk about pay, because most Australians have no idea where they actually sit on the income scale, and that blind spot costs them. Here are the numbers as of 2026. The national minimum wage sits at $24.95 an hour. That's $948 a week, or roughly $49,300 a year before tax. That's your retail workers, your hospitality staff, your entry-level admin, a massive chunk of the country. The median full-time wage, the point where half of Australia earns more and half earns less, sits at around $90,500 a year. Not the average, the median. The average gets pulled upward by surgeons and mining executives and looks like $106,000. But the median is where most people actually live. Ask yourself right now, where do you sit? Because everything we're about to go through is going to mean something very different, depending on your answer. And here's the permission-giving stat before we go any further. If you're earning somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000, you are not behind. You are exactly where the bulk of working Australia sits. The conversation around property has been so dominated by high-income voices that the middle majority has started to feel like the exception. You're not, you're the rule. Now let's talk about what property actually looks like for you. If you're earning around $50,000 a year, your take-home pay after tax is roughly $959 a week. Let that sit for a second. $959 every week to cover rent or a mortgage, food, transport, utilities, phone, and everything else that makes up a life. At that income, most lenders will offer you a borrowing capacity of somewhere between $280,000 and $340,000. And that assumes your expenses are lean and your credit is clean. Now look at the national median dwelling price, $922,000 as of early 2026. In Sydney, the median house is $1.6 million. Melbourne sits at $977,000. Even Adelaide, which people used to call affordable, is pushing $980,000 for a house. The honest truth is this. On $50,000 a year, buying a standalone house in a capital city as a solo buyer is, right now, extremely difficult. That's not a personal failure. That's a structural reality. But here's what that income level can access. Units and apartments in regional cities, townhouses in outer metro areas, properties in Darwin, where the median sits well below other capitals and a single buyer on around $111,000 can enter the market, meaning a couple on combined $50,000 each is actually in striking distance. And government schemes like the First Home Guarantee, which now covers 50,000 places a year, can get you in with as little as a 5% deposit. The $50,000 path is narrow, but it's not closed. This is the income band that gets the least useful advice because it falls awkwardly between you can't afford anything and you'll be fine. At $75,000, your take home is around $1,146 a week. At $100,000, it's around $1,475. Your borrowing power at $75,000 sits roughly between $420,000 and $500,000. At $100,000, you're looking at somewhere between $550,000 and $650,000, depending on your expenses, debts, and deposit. Now think about what that buys you in 2026. In Sydney, almost nothing for a house, but units in Western Sydney, suburbs like Mount Druitt, Maryland's St. Mary's, are still accessible. These same suburbs saw price growth of 13 to 14% in the past year alone, which tells you the market already knows something. In Melbourne, you're into the unit market comfortably, and outer ring suburbs start to open up. In Brisbane, Adelaide, and Perth, the picture changes meaningfully. A $500,000 to $600,000 budget gets you into established suburbs that 5 years ago felt out of reach, because Brisbane's market has climbed 86% in 5 years. But pockets of affordability still exist if you know where to look. And here's the third reality that most people in this income band never consider. Regional cities, not rural, not remote. Regional cities, Geelong, Ballarat, Toowoomba, Bendigo, Launceston, Sunshine Coast, hinterland. These are places with hospitals, universities, cafes, co-working spaces, and communities. And they have median house prices that $75,000 to $100,000 earners can actually reach. The median house price in regional Australia sits at around $767,000, still significant, but materially more accessible than capital city medians, and with lifestyle trade-offs that more Australians are deciding are worth it. If you're in this income band and you feel stuck, ask yourself this: am I only looking where everyone else is looking? Here's where it gets interesting and a little confronting. At $150,000 a year, your take home is around $2,081 a week, roughly $108,000 annually after tax. You feel like you're doing well, because you are, compared to the median, but then you look at Sydney. To buy the median Sydney house at $1.6 million with a 20% deposit, you need $320,000 saved just to get to the table. And the mortgage repayments on the remaining $1.28 million at current rates would consume well over 30% of your pre-tax income, which is the clinical definition of mortgage stress. Domains analysis found that a single buyer in Sydney needs to earn around $232,000 a year to buy comfortably at the median. On $150,000, you're still $80,000 short of what Sydney considers entry level for a house. Think about what that means. You're earning more than 85% of the country, and the city you might live in is still telling you that you're not quite there. This isn't said to crush you. It's said because pretending otherwise is what keeps people making plans based on the wrong map. At $150,000, here's what actually opens up. You can buy confidently in Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, and Perth. You can buy well in regional markets. You can buy a quality unit in inner Sydney. And if you're part of a couple where both partners earn in this range, combined $300,000, the Sydney median house becomes genuinely accessible. The strategy at $150,000 isn't about whether you can buy. It's about being honest about where. At $200,000, your take-home lands around $137,000 a year, $2,644 a week. At this level, your borrowing capacity pushes past $1 million, potentially significantly higher depending on your situation. Most capital city markets become accessible. You can buy a house in Brisbane, Adelaide, or Perth without mortgage stress. Melbourne opens up across a wide range of suburbs. In Sydney, you're into the market, though the inner suburbs and harbour-adjacent postcodes will still stretch you. The question at this income level stops being, can I buy? And starts being, what am I actually building toward? Are you buying a home to live in? An investment property? A second property? The strategy changes completely. And this is where structure, how you hold the asset, how the loan is set up, what you do next, starts to matter as much as the purchase price itself. One thing worth knowing, even at $200,000 a year, the time to save a 20% deposit for Sydney's median house is substantial. At a diligent savings rate, you're looking at several years, which is why at this income level, people often pivot to buying in a different market first, building equity somewhere more accessible, before using that as a stepping stone into their preferred city. Here's the stat that most property conversations skip over entirely. House prices in Australia are currently 16.4 times the average annual income per person. In the 1990s and early 2000s, that ratio was 9.5 times. Let that land for a moment. It's not that Australians have become worse with money. It's not that the current generation is spending too much on coffee. The ratio between what people earn and what homes cost has almost doubled in a generation. That's a structural shift, not a personal one. And yet, and this is the important part, people are still buying. At every income level. Not always where they imagined. Not always when they planned. But they're buying. The ones who get there aren't the ones who waited for the perfect market. They're the ones who got honest about their number, got clear on their actual options, and stopped comparing their Chapter 1 to someone else's Chapter 10. Wherever you sit on the income scale, here's the action that moves the needle. First, find out your actual borrowing power, not the figure you've guessed in your head, the real number from a lender or a broker based on your actual income, expenses, and debts. This one step changes everything, because most people are either more capable than they think, or they're planning for the wrong budget entirely. Second, expand your search radius, even just mentally. Before you decide what's possible, look at 3 markets you haven't seriously considered: regional cities, neighboring suburbs, a different state. You might still choose where you originally planned, but you'll choose it with information, not just habit. Third, if you're in a couple, run the combined numbers. The difference between one $80,000 income and two $80,000 incomes in this market is not incremental, it's transformational. A combined $160,000 household income opens up the majority of Australian property markets at a level that feels genuinely comfortable. And finally, stop benchmarking against the median house price in Sydney if you don't live there, don't plan to live there, and never actually wanted to live there. That number lives rent-free in the Australian psyche and makes everyone feel behind. Your market is your market. Here's the truth this video is really trying to get to. Property in Australia is hard right now. It's harder than it was for the generation before you. That's real, and anyone who tells you otherwise is not being straight with you. But hard is not the same as impossible, and feeling behind is not the same as being behind. The people who find their way into property aren't the ones who earn the most or got the luckiest timing. They're the ones who stopped waiting for clarity to arrive and went out and built it. By understanding their numbers, being honest about their options, and taking one concrete step instead of 10 hypothetical ones. You now know more than most people walking into this conversation. That's not nothing. That's actually everything. If this gave you a clearer picture of where you stand, subscribe and hit the notification bell. See you in the next one.